Economics at the Department of Quantitative Methods at the Universidad de la República in Montevideo, in Uruguay. He started his career in Italy, in Siena, with Professor Punzo. He was associate professor at the University of Bolzano until 2014, and then come back to Uruguay. If we look at the Google Scholar website, I find more than 300 papers authored by Gabriel and more than 9,000 citations. His contribution to the literature of tourism economics is very large. Include a lot of relevant topics, from the relation between economic growth and tourism to the economic impact of cruise tourism in different regions. He published in the main tourism journals, such as Tourism Management, Tourism Economics, International Journal of Tourism Research, Tourism Geographies, Journal of Cultural Economics, Journal of Travel Research, and current issues in tourism. Today is going to present an interesting work on the compositional tourism expenditure in Uruguay, a work joined with Viviana Lanzillotta and Leonardo Moreno, both from the Universidad de la República in Uruguay. The rules of the game are always the same: 1 hour for the paper presentation and 1 hour for questions and discussion. Since the webinar is recorded, I invite who does not agree with this to move to our YouTube channel. So for my side, that's all, I think. Gabriel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria Giovanna, for the presentation. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am lucky that I have at least one of my co-authors here just to help me with this long presentation, because 2 hours is much that we have normally. And so today we will present this paper entitled Compositional Tourism Expenditure Modeling Through Dirichlet Regression. So this paper is the third, let's say, in a series of papers that we are working together with Viviana and Leonardo, trying to model and to understand how the tourists distribute their expenditure into the different items. So normally what we can find in the literature is our models to understand or to analyze how is the general tourist expenditure, but there are few models to understand what is the composition of the expenditure. So in this paper, as you see, we are presenting a new methodology, new in the sense of an application to the tourist economics area. In particular, the idea of modeling the tourist items of expenditure using this Dirichlet regression, because there are also a few papers using compositional data, but not the Dirichlet regression. So let me start. So an overview of the presentation. First of all, I will go further in what is the motivation of the research. What is the background that we have behind this research? Then I will present the data that we will use for this exercise and the details of the methodology. Finally, we will present the empirical results and some conclusions of this research. Okay, so the motivation. The first research question that you have is how do tourists distribute their expenditure at a destination? So this is what we want to understand. So how they distribute it into the different items that they spend in a destination. A second research question is, what are the characteristics of the tourist that infer a certain relative spending pattern? So as we will see in the empirical exercise, we can cluster the group of tourists depending on their spending pattern in the different items. So the idea is to characterize the tourists that spend in a certain way. A third question is, this expenditure pattern has any differential behavior depending on the seasons of the year, on the length of stays at the destination, on the nationality of the tourist, or etc., etc. Okay, so we want to use additional variables to understand if there are differential behaviors depending on these variables. Okay. If you want an additional motivation to this paper is the introduction of this statistical tool that is a compositional data analysis. This statistical tool is used when data contain information about the composition of the different parts of the total. So the idea is that this methodology is particularly interesting when you want to describe a certain variable that can be decomposed into different parts, okay, that compose the total, okay. You know, this is a tool that was widely used in other disciplines, but very few in economics and very few in tourism. So our study models the relative expenditure of tourists among the different items as a function of a set of covariables by introducing a Dirichlet regression model. This Dirichlet regression can be used to predict the ratio in which the total sum X can be distributed among the components Y. Okay, so some background. On aggregate tourist demand, you can find hundreds of empirical studies using different econometric and statistical methodologies and several published review papers on aggregate tourist demand modeling and forecasting. So this is the most studied, one of the most studied topics in tourist economics. So how to forecast the tourist demand, how to model the tourist demand, but in terms of aggregate tourist demand. Probably this is because, you know, we have several papers of this type, probably because it's the data that we can have with more, for example, the time series in data of tourist demand in aggregate forms are relatively long, and we have very few databases where we can have data at a microeconomic level. So in general, what the countries publish or what the countries and the organizations offer is data in terms of the aggregate demand. So that is why on the other hand, the academic work that analyzed the determinant of tourist spending at the microeconomic level has been relatively less and more recent. So the papers that you can find trying to analyze the tourist demand, or if you want, the tourist expenditure at the microeconomic level are less and are more recent. We have a review with Rafael Scuderi of, let's say, I don't remember exactly the year, but it was in some 10 years ago, let's say, where we reviewed what was the literature at this microeconomic level, and it was really, I think we find something like less than 100 papers in this area. Okay, as I said, this is not the first paper where we try to model at a microeconomic level the distribution of tourist expenditure into the different items. So we have, with the same co-authors, Viviana, Leonardo, and another co-author, Lorenza Santiniaki, we have two previous papers. One is published in Tourist Management, and the other is published in the Journal of Hospitality and Tourist Research, where we analyze the tourist expenditure into the different items, including accommodation, food, transportation, and so on. But you know, the application in these two previous papers were for data of cruise tourists, and in this case, the methodology that we used was in one paper was the copula, the use of copulas, and on the other, I don't remember now. Probably Leo remember what was the methodology in the other paper, but was an alternative, also a non-linear way to modelize the expenditure. So this is, let's say, the third paper where we try to analyze the distribution of tourist expenditure, and in each paper, what we do is to introduce a different methodology that can explain the phenomena in a different way. Okay, so as I said, there are a lot of papers on modelizing tourist demand in aggregate level. There are less papers trying to modelize tourist expenditure at a microeconomic level. But there are only a few papers that analyze the distribution of the tourist expenditure at microeconomic level into different items, and in particular, there is only a branch that uses CoDa compositional data analysis to analyze how do tourists distribute their expenditure at destination. This paper and these authors, I will come at the end of the presentation with the references. But this paper and these authors, they are from Spain, from Catalonia, from the University of Girona and Barcelona. These are, let's say, the pioneers introducing composition and data analysis to analyze the tourist distribution of expenditure as a destination. But they also have, let's say, 2 or 3 papers on this aspect. Okay. What they have, these authors, Coenders and Ferrell and Rosell, both from the University of Girona, what they have is a recent paper published in Tourist Analysis that reviews all the application of compositional data analysis in tourism and hospitality to date. To be honest, what they review are all the application of compositional data analysis, not only in tourism and hospitality, but in all social sciences, because they just find very few papers with applications of tourism and of the compositional data analysis in tourism and hospitality, and I think the majority of these papers are of the group of Catalonia. Okay, but this paper in particular, you have to take it in mind because it's a recent review of the application of this methodology in social sciences. To the best of our knowledge, there are no application in tourism of the Dirichlet regressions. As you will see in the presentation, compositional data analysis is let's say, a very descriptive methodology that is complemented normally with some statistical modeling. One that can be used, and it is used in other disciplines, are the Dirichlet regressions that we will present later. But to the best of our knowledge, there are no application of this Dirichlet regression to model in tourism in general, but also in modeling the determinant of the relative tourist expenditure. And again, to the best of our knowledge, and what reports the previous review paper of Coenders and Ferrer-Rosell, there is only one paper using Dirichlet regression and CoDa analysis in the area of social science. I just let me say a little word, because we presented this paper in the seminar of this big group of compositional data analysis, not only in the area of tourism. So in Girona and Barcelona and another city of Catalonia that I don't remember where is the university, they have a big group, let's say, in compositional data analysis. They have a seminar in compositional data analysis, not only in applications to tourists, but also from the theoretical viewpoint. And we presented the paper, and they comment us that they use very few this Dirichlet regression model, even if it is a methodology that is particularly interesting to be applied in this type of data, where you have the total described as the part of the total. Okay, good. Let me go to the data that we will use in the first. I describe the data that we will use in the empirical study, and then I will come in the description of the methodology. Let me say that this is a very interesting data because of the length, of the quantity of data that we have, first of all, and because it's data obtained every year applying the same questionnaire. So we have a panel of 6 years of data, where the total sample size consists of more than 70,000 surveys. You know, this data comes from the Receptive Tourist Survey in Uruguay. It is collected by the Ministry of Tourism Uruguay, which is aimed at not resident tourists who visit our country. And the survey is applied at the country's exit and enter, surely. So, but they apply the survey when they leave the country. So they apply it in different places because we have let's say this dry frontier, these bridges that connect Argentina with Uruguay, where where people coming from Argentina, that is, Argentina is, let's say, is the most important part of tourists that we have in Uruguay. More than 50% of the international tourists coming to Uruguay come from Argentina, and so most of them come by car, using the different bridges, or using the boat, the boats. So they interview every year, during the whole year, the different people that is coming to Uruguay to do tourism. Okay. So to insist, this data is of international tourists in Uruguay. So we are not taking into account domestic tourists in this analysis. So we will analyze only the international tourists in Uruguay. So at the end, we obtained a little less than 7,000 surveys that are useful for our research because of what they answer at the questionnaire. This data is open and it's available at the Minister of Tourism. It's a pity that because of the pandemic, they didn't collect data in 2020, and they are not collecting data in 2021. I think they restarted collecting data now in November, because at the 1st of November, Uruguay opened again the frontier for international tourists. Okay, so we will start doing some descriptive statistics of this data, but descriptive statistics, not in terms more, you will see, of the compositional data analysis. Okay, good. The methodology. So let me explain, as Leonardo put it here in the title, what is the compositional data analysis in 5 minutes. First of all, if you have questions or something, you can interrupt me, or you can send me the questions by chat. And for Leo, if you want to say something, please be free to do it. Okay, Leonardo. Good. So, just to illustrate and to have some graphical representations of what we are talking about, let's suppose that we have a total that can be divided in three items. Okay, this is not our case because we will have more than 3 items, but this is a way where we can understand better the methodology. I think for the economists here in the I don't know if every participant of this seminar is an economist, but for the economists this is good, because the economists usually use this type of simplifications when they teach microeconomics, for example. Let me say to represent the expected utility of an agent, you know. just to represent the expected utility of an agent, you have to do it using a maximum of 3 components or 3 possible events in the uncertain framework. Okay, so the idea is, suppose that we have a total X that can be divided into 3 different items, X1, X2, X3. Okay, so let me say that X1 plus X2 plus X3 is X, or if you want in percents, the sum of the percents of X1, X2, X3 is 100. Okay, so suppose that the first thing is to normalize the vector X just divided into the total. Okay, so this is a way to represent the vector as a vector of percents. Okay, so you can think, if you multiply this by 100, you obtain the percentage of X1, X2, X3 into the total. Okay, but from a mathematical viewpoint, it's better to represent it as a fraction. Okay, so all these are fractions between 0 and 1, and the sum of these 3 terms is 1. That is why this vector lives in S3. S3 is nothing more than the simplex in dimension 3. Okay, so the simplex in dimension 3 is the triangle where the 3 components are positive and the sum is 1. So is this what we have here? This green triangle is what we call the simplex in R3, so in the space. And here you have how you obtain the X1, X2, and X3 from X, because this is nothing more than the projection. Okay, so you put together the origin with the X, intercept with the green triangle, and there you obtain the components of the normalization of X that we're talking about. So this is the data. So we will use the data in this way. As you can see, we are losing what is the total expenditure, and we are losing the unit where we measure the expenditure, let's say dollars. Okay, so what we are just analyzing is what is the composition of the expenditure. Okay, here you have, for example, I don't have here so suppose that X is 100 and that the components of X are 18, 22, and 60. So the normalization is 18%, 22%, and 60%. And this is the representation that we have. So as you can see, here you obtain Y1, here Y2, and here Y3, and you can see the dimension. So in this vector, for example, as we know it from here, the biggest component is the third, and this is represented because this arrow is bigger than this and this. Okay, so this is the representation in dimension 2. So the previous triangle is represented in dimension 2 in this way. I remember that just to return to the expected utility, there is a very similar representation of the expected utility that is called the triangle of, I don't remember. Probably if here we have some microeconomics professor can remember the name of this triangle to represent the expected utility, but this is the way. This is exactly the same. So it's the Alzheimer. If I remember the name, I will come later. Okay. Here we have another way to represent this compositional data of the vector again, 16, 22, and 1. So you can put it in this way where you obtain the maximum of 100, okay? Good. So the first thing is, as you can see, the data that we are using is a data that do not live, let's say, in the whole R3 space. So it's data that is bounded into the green triangle that we saw in the representation. Okay, so in a mathematician language, the data is it lives in a linear manifold with boundary. Okay, this linear manifold with boundary, that this is the mathematical term. This is the green triangle, okay? And the boundary are the boundaries of the triangle. So the three segments composing the boundary of the triangle, okay? So linear manifold because it lives in a linear world. The linear world is a plane, okay? So it's a part of the plane, and it had this manifold has a linear structure. So first of all, the data is characterized for being a linear manifold with boundary. This is the particular point that creates, let's say, or that is the motivation of using a particular regression methodology. Okay, so in a linear model, in general, the coefficient matrix is a singular matrix. But if we are in the simplex, the output is if an element of the simplex is the output of a regression model, then the assumptions of normality are not possible. I'm receiving a lot of emails, so sorry if you see it, but I just close it. Okay, so I hope you can understand what is the motivation of this, of why do we have to introduce a particular regression model. So we have to introduce a particular regression model because we are working with particular data that is in a triangle with a boundary, let's say in dimension 3. Okay, good. So let me now explain what is the Dirichlet regression. So the Dirichlet regression is defined by the density described in the formula here, where this is the gamma function. Okay, so this Dirichlet distribution is a function in our variable that is the normalized x, okay, or y, okay, and depends on the parameters alpha 1, 2, and 3, okay, and it's defined in this way. So the alphas are positive, the y's lives in the simplex, and gamma is the gamma function. Well, if you do the computation, you can see that the expected value of ye is exactly the proportion of the alpha e over alpha 0, that is the total, that is the sum of alpha 1 plus alpha 2 plus alpha 3, and the variance is defined in this way. Okay, so it's this over alpha 0 plus 1. Okay. In the Dirichlet regression, the logarithm function is used as a link function in a generalized linear model. So the idea is, as in every generalized linear model, we have a function of link. So we have a function that links the covariables and the parameters, okay? because the alpha are positive numbers, okay, when we take the logarithm of the alphas, we obtain a number that can take any value between minus infinity and plus infinity. And this logarithm is described in this way, where x is the vector of covariates and beta are the respective coefficients. So what we will obtain are the betas, okay? When we compute the regression, what we obtain are the betas, but what we need to for the interpretation of the result are the alphas. Okay, good. Here you have the level sets, Dirichlet density and simulation of 200 observations. In the left panel, you have alpha 01, 01, 01. Then you have alpha 1, 1, 1, alpha 5, 5, 5, and here is alpha is 1/2 to 5. So you can interpret this level set Dirichlet as the expected value and the variance of the previous case, okay, of this, okay. So this is a way to interpret the variance and the expected value, because here you have the alphas. You remember that alpha 0 is alpha 1 plus alpha 2 plus alpha 3. So in this case, alpha 0 is 0.3. In this case, alpha 0 is 3. In this case, alpha 0 is 15, and so on. Okay. And so the expected value is the sum. Excuse me. The expected value is this vector divided by alpha 0. So this divided by 0.3. Okay. And the variance is in the inverse proportion to the alpha. Okay. If I am so technical, you can interrupt me and say, go on. Okay. Okay. The distribution of relative expenditure in the different items is modeled. So what the items that we take into account are, in the questionnaire that we use to the tourists, they have different items. We take the more important that are accommodation, food, expenditure in food, expenditure in shopping, and expenditure in tours. Excuse me. So we will model the relative expenditure of these different items, and we will use these covariates, the days of stay. So they must stay at least 1 day to be a tourist, because we have some people that enters just to go from Argentina to Brazil. So they enter to the country and they left the country in the same day. We use the total expenditure in amount of dollars, let's say. The nationality in particular, we will use the Argentinian nationality, the Brazilian nationality, and the rest of the nationalities. I think we will use also the nationality of Uruguayans that lives abroad and comes to do tourism in Uruguay, that are also considered international tourists. And as a covariate, we will use also the destination, and we will take into account the two more important destinations in Uruguay that where, let's say, more than 95% of the tourists come to these two destinations. One is Montevideo, that is the capital of the country, and the second is Punta del Este, that is a well-known balneary destination. So it's a sand and beach destination. And we suppose that the alphas is a function of the days for Argentinians and Brazilians. Okay, good. So let me first let me first show you this figure here. Okay. So in this, I hope you can see the colors that we have here, but we have in blue the expenditure in accommodation, in red the expenditure in food, in pink the expenditure in tools, and in brown the expenditure in shopping. And as a dotted line, we have alpha 0 over 10, that is I think it's the total. Okay. So we have 3 panels. The central panel is for Argentinians, the left panel for Argentinians, the central panel is for Brazilians, and the last panel is for Uruguayans. As you can see in the representations, we have a slightly different behaviors in the distribution of the expenditure in each value. But as you can see here, for example, let's say for Argentinians and the variable food, for example, you can see here that the line is increasing. You know, the horizontal axis are the days staying in the country. So we are taking into account tourists that stay between 1 and 20 days. Okay, and here in the vertical axis you have the value that is the proportion that they have. Okay, so if you add at each vertical cross, if you add the values of each cross of the vertical line with the colored line, the sum must be 1. Okay, because at each point these give me the proportion of what they spend. Okay, so first of all, it's interesting to see that we have a monotonic behavior in each variable, and independently on the type of tourist, on the nationality of tourist, let's say. Okay, for example, what we have is the proportion of expenditure in food is increasing with the total of days. So the more they stay, the bigger is the proportion of expenditure in food. And this is true for Argentinians, Brazilians, and Uruguayans. But for accommodation, the more they stay, the less they spend in accommodation, because the blue lines are in the 3 cases decreasing, not in the same way as you can see. So for the Uruguayans, it's almost flat. This could be because a lot of Uruguayans, as you can say, because of the proportion of what they spend in accommodation, they come to houses of relatives, for example, or they come for friend houses. Okay, this is not the case for Brazilians, where the proportion of expenditure in accommodation is always in the middle here, and also for Argentinians. But in every case, the expenditure in accommodation is decreasing with the numbers of days that they stay in Uruguay. This can also be explained because of, for example, the more you stay in a hotel, the less is the quantity that you have to pay per day, for example. or things like this, okay? Or because if you the long you stay, it's also a characteristic of people that goes to second homes instead of going to resorts of hotels, okay, and so on. The expenditure in tours is also decreasing with the number of days that they stay. Again, this is for the 3 cases, okay, and the expenditure in shopping is increasing, okay. The relative expenditure in shopping is the relative. You know, always remember that this is in terms of relative expenditure, okay. So the relative expenditure in increases is in shopping, excuse me, is increasing. Good. Here you have also another representation. Now we are dividing the 2 panels because of the destination. I think these figures are more clear than the previous one because are bigger. And here you can see something that in the previous picture was not so clear. That is that these lines do not have to be linear, okay? The lines do not have to be linear, so it could be a nonlinear curves, okay? Observe also that the behavior in this case is much more different than it was in the case of when we separate the tourists by nationality, okay? So I think this is reflecting also that this specific destination, Montevideo, is more a business destination, let's say, and a cultural destination and an event destination. So people, for example, at the end of this month, we will have at Montevideo a big event that is the final of the 2 most important soccer cups in Latin America. And the other destination, Punta del Este, is much more, as I said, as a sun and beach destination. So here, people comes much more for staying longer than in Montevideo, surely. So surely the people that stays in Montevideo more than 5 days is very different from the people that comes to Punta del Este more than 5 days. So most of the people coming to Montevideo, as I said, come for business, for cultural aspects, visiting friends, or events. But in Punta del Este, the attraction is the beach, the sun, the sand, the beach, and so on. Okay. Good. Again, here you can see that the relative expenditure in food and in shopping, again here, are increasing with the number of days that they remain at the destination, but the relative expenditure in the accommodation and in tours is decreasing with the number of days they stay at the destination. Okay, here we have now the representation for where the alphas are for tourists for total spending. And again, we have here Brazilians, Argentina, Brazilians, and Uruguayans. And again, the behavior is similar. But as you can see, what are the big differences are in the scale of where these lines are occupied in the panel. So, for example, here the red line is very high, but here is not so high. What have different here also is that we have a decreasing behavior, also here, or flat if you want, but here we have an increasing, and so on. So this is one way to interpret the relative expenditures depending on the nationality, depending on the destination, and so on. Excuse me, I didn't. To be more clear here. Here, what is different from this picture to this picture? In this picture, we were analyzing the behavior depending on the number of days they stay at the destination for Argentinians, Brazilians, and Uruguay. Here, we are analyzing the behavior, again, for Argentina, Brazilians, and Uruguay, but depending on the total expenditure. So the total expenditure can go from 0 to 5,000 euros. So 0 now, but something have to spend. So that is why the lines do not start at 0. Okay. So when we analyze here, depending on the total expenditure, again, you can interpret. I will not repeat myself on this, but again, you can interpret this. For example, in the case of Argentinians, you can say that the total expenditure in food, the relative total expenditure in food, that is around 50% of the expenditure of Argentinians, remains more or less constant independently on what is the total expenditure. So what we can say here is more or less that in general, Argentinians expend 1/2 of the money that they spend, independently on what is the amount of this expenditure, but they spend 1/2. They spend 1/2 in food. Okay. What is not independent is, for example, the expenditure in accommodation. Okay, so the more they spend, the bigger is the relative expenditure in accommodation. And the more they spend, the lower is the relative expenditure in tours and shopping. This is for the case of Argentina. Okay, you can interpret in the same way what is the case for Brazilians, what is the case for Uruguayans living abroad. Okay. So here you have a description, a table describing the proportions of answers in each covariable. So in the total sample, we have, as I said, more than 50% is Argentinians, ¿verdad? Then the second nationality are Brazilians, but very close to Uruguayans living abroad. Okay, and then they have a few people less, as you can say, 6% of Europeans and 3% of Americans. So, as I said, that is why we use only these nationalities for the analysis, because the others can be put into other nationalities. Okay, the same is for destination. As you can see, almost 40% of the people comes to as the main destination they visit is Montevideo, but this is very close to Punta del Este. That is 30%. There is a third destination that is not bad, it has a not bad performance. That is Colonia. That is a heritage city very close to Buenos Aires. That is visited by 10% of the tourists. Thermal here is the thermal sites in the north and so on. But Again, the main destinations are Montevideo and Punta del Este, and this is reflected in the percentage of answers that we have declaring the main destination they visited. As you can see, also the majority of the people visiting the country is in ages between 40 and 60, and also an important part between 20 and 40. Here you have the profession, what is the accommodation. So as you can see here, what is important, we have this quantity of people with second homes. So international people coming to Uruguay that have a second home is not bad. It's 5 point, almost 6%. Rental houses is another category that can be put into together with second homes because and 40% come to hotels. So as I can show you, is that the quantity of people coming to hotels is not very large, very big. Okay, 20% of the people comes for family reasons, and more of the people comes for holidays. Okay, and this is not very. As you can see, the majority of the people is that answered the questionnaire is located in January, February, and December. That is the summer months. If you want, let's add March and November. So from November to March, we have the majority of the people answering the questionnaire. That is why, that is because most of the tourists come in this period. Okay, here you have an alternative way to represent the relative expenditure, but in average of the proportion of tourists according to the origin, the year, and the season. Okay, so here you have an enlarged version of what you have up, just to see that you have different behaviors in the years. Okay, and if you want to see a dynamic, you can see that from the blue to the less blue, you describe a behavior that comes from here, goes to the green, and then return to here. Okay, in the third cases and the three cases, okay, let me go ahead. So here you have another descriptive statistics where you have in each section, vertical section, you have the different items. Here we added other items that were not considered in the previous case, that are, you have accommodation, food, transport, culture, expenditure in culture, expenditure in tours, expenditure in shoppings, expenditure in other expenditures. And what you have here in the vertical line is the proportion. Excuse me a moment, because I have to connect this. So I lose I will be back in a minute. Can you see the screen here, or I have to learn it, no? Yeah. Can you see the screen, or you lose the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen, but also
a different screen.
Yeah, the comentarios.
Okay, now we are.
Perfect.
Because I lost my second screen, and so it was a. I'm boring you, Maria Giovanna, or?
Sorry, Gabriel, but your hour is finishing, so 5 minutes to conclude
okay,
the
just to
presentation.
Me. I wanted to go very slow, but it was too slow. Okay, so let me say, here you have the results of the Dirichlet models for different cases. Okay, so when here you have the results, as I said, what you obtain from the results are the alphas, and you need the betas to interpret. Okay, so this is very technical, just the results to see. Okay, so let me say that in addition to the Dirichlet models, we have other methodologies to use to compute to model the data as a function of another variable, and the most common used methodology is the log radius transformation. But as you can see here, there are different difficulties for this type of models. The big problem is the problem of the zeros. You know, because you have this boundary in the domain of our regression, is that we have to apply always a transformation to avoid the problem of zeros. Okay, so let me just to finish give a brief summary of the results. So from the compositional analysis, we just say that accommodation and tours decreases participation and expenditure on food and shopping. At best, food and shopping increases as tourists stay longer. The phenomenon is diverse for both Argentina, Brazilians, that are with the non-resident Uruguay is the principal source of tourists for Uruguay. In Brazilian tourists, the increase of the share of expenditure on food and shopping and the decrease of accommodation and tours as the stay extended is more pronounced. When the stay is less, the dispersion reduces. As expected, the type of accommodation affect the pattern of tourist expenditure and the spending on accommodation. These are the results from the descriptive part. From the Dirichlet model, what information that this model adds to the CoDa analysis? One, in the two models that we analyzed, in model one, one conclusion, one result that we have is that the concentration on accommodation diminishes in low and middle tourist seasons, and food and other increase in middle season. So when we have a look with respect to the seasons, we can have this result. The model one also shows that spending on accommodation seems to reduce participation since 2017, while food and other expenditures increases. The model 2 says that when the tourist destination is neither Montevideo nor the San Beach destination, the concentration in accommodation also reduces. This model also shows that the pattern of spending also changes according to nationality. The concentration of expenditure on accommodation is higher in the case of Argentinians and North Americans. Alternatively, the concentration of food is higher in Brazilian tourists than in other nationalities. So to conclude, two models are analyzed. One including only tourist season and year, the second including tourist destination, type of accommodation, and nationality. The expender pattern in accommodation, food, and others varies significantly according to the tourist season, the tourist destination, the type of accommodation, and the nationality. There are significant differences in the proportion of spending on accommodation, food, and shopping when tourists do not take place in the high season. Additionally, when the tourist destination is neither Montevideo nor Punta del Este, concentration in accommodation also reduces. So this study, if you start looking at the results that we obtained, brings some tools to analyze what is the behavior of the tourists as consumers visiting Uruguay related to the expenditure pattern and microeconomic level, and in particular with respect to the proportion of expenditures in the different items. Particularly useful for doing adjustment of the tourist supplies according to the demand behavior. Okay, we have a long agenda of extending this research, including using alternative models, using other variables, studying other destinations, and so on. And here I have the references that they mentioned before. That but I think I sent you the paper and the paper. I sent you the paper. So if someone want to go further on the research. Maria Giovanna, can I have 1 minute to take a glass of water?
Yeah, you have. Thank you, Gabriel, for your presentation. So now is the time of questions, curiosity, comments. I invite, first of all, our PhD student to think about some question, to make a question to Gabriel in order to better understand this interesting presentation.
Giovanna, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I see that we have among the not really attendees, but what is in Italian spettatori, I don't know, I always put in English, the PhD students of a new cycle who have been invited by Velta to basically be upgraded as panelists. It seems that the majority of them did not really accept the invitation, and they should, guys, if you can hear me, you should accept the invitation to be upgraded as panelists, because this is the only way you can participate by raising questions. If you remain attendees, we can't allow you talking. So you should have received by Velta, our ICT responsible here, an upgrade from attendees to panelists. Please try to recover the invitation and make the upgrade. This works through providing you are in with a GSSI account, otherwise it's not really safe. So a sort of precondition basically would be for you to be in with GSSI account, but I see now in direct that a number of you are actually making the upgrade. Good, very good. Sorry, Giovanna, and I just make you notice that there's already a raise hand and a stop here.
So also, Sandro, I can admit spettatori and
you can make the upgrade yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, so they can speak now.
Super, very well.
So, Gabriel, for the moment, we have a question from Takashi Sasabe, which is a GSSI PhD student. So please, Takashi.
Please, Takashi.
Yes, hello. Can
Hello.
you, hello? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the presentation. It was a very interesting topic, but I'm not familiar with the tourism economics and Uruguayan geography, so I have a couple of questions about to better understand the study. The first one is about the data. I'd like to know more in detail how survey was conducted and what do you think are the possible biases coming from the survey collection. And the second one is about the covariate you showed, the expenditure, nationality, and the length of stay. I wondered how the graph, the expenditure distribution would be changed if the graph showed against the expenditure per day, like the expenditure per day might reflect the type of traveler, like backpacker kind of traveler and vacance kind of rich traveler. So the expenditure per day graph might show the lines less flat than the total expenditure graph, unless the destination has narrow price range of the tourism items like hotels or food restaurants. So I wonder how it would change.
Okay. So
yeah,
for
just
the first,
a couple, two questions. Yeah, thank you.
I first answered the first, then the second you have to explain me further because I didn't understand what is particularly your but let me say the first of all. So as I said, this is secondary data. So we are not responsible for the sampling and the collection of this data. So this data is collected by the Ministry of Industry. They have a department of statistics. Some of them were students of us, so we know them. So they use this. It is not easy to collect data in a random way, let's say. Okay, so it is difficult to have representative data because you cannot interview every tourist. Okay, so you cannot do a census. So you have to select who to interview and who no. Okay, so I think that the strategy they have is just first to maintain the proportion of women and men, okay, and second they try to they would do it more or less randomly, okay. So every 3 tourists they interview one, for example, okay, and they interview only a member of the group. Okay, so if there is a group visiting the country, because most of the tourists coming, particularly to the Sun of Beach destination, are families. So they interview the boss of the family, that normally is the woman. Okay. Okay. For the second question, I didn't understand what was your your point. I can go to the picture if you want. I can go.
Yes, please. The total expenditure picture.
This one.
Graph. Yeah.
For the total expenditure, no? This one.
Yeah. So this is the graph against the total expenditure of the travel, right? Yeah. So I wonder, how do you think the graph would change if the graph is against the expenditure per day, like daily expenditure, because in this total expenditure graph, they mix up rich and poor tourists, and so I would say, let's say, the expenditure per day graph, maybe that lines would be less flat, distinguishing poor, rich tourists.
Oh, this is interesting. It's an interesting question. I think we didn't do it, Leonardo.
Yeah, unless
let me use my Spanish. That's for my co-author. That is not very.
Okay.
¿No? Leonardo, no hicimos esto, ¿verdad? El estudio del gasto por día, no, ¿verdad?
No, por día no hicimos el estudio, digamos. Puede ser interesante, sí.
Es interesante. Okay. No, Takashi, you can continue in Japanese. You are Japanese, no?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, you can continue in Japanese now if you want.
El problema es que la encuesta no se le pregunta el gasto por día, se le pregunta el gasto en su estadía, digamos.
Claro, pero por día lo podemos poner cuántos días tuvo.
Sí, promediando por día se puede hacer, sí, digamos.
Eso. Me parece que es interesante lo que dice Takashi.
Yeah,
no, Takashi, just to, it's a very interesting question. We didn't think about this, and we will try to do it. You know, what the data, what we have is the total expenditure and the number of days, so we can obtain this expenditure per day. That is interesting because surely we will have a different picture.
Mm-hmm. And again, of course, I'm not familiar with the Uruguayan geography, so I'm not sure. But in case each destination has narrow price range of tourism items, in that case, maybe the graph stays flat again, because this city hosts only rich tourists, and this city hosts only poor or relatively poor tourists.
This
so
is not the case. I don't think
not the case. Then maybe.
Surely we do not receive poor tourists, but
yeah. So I just wondered maybe the daily expenditure.
In the sense,
graph.
In this part of the world, tourism is what is the name? It's a superior good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so not everybody can go for tourism. So we receive more or less people.
Yeah.
You know, it's distributed because every destination has parts for people with more money and less money. So I think this will not be, but it's my intuition. We can also try to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Takashi. I'll start something more.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Andrea.
Listen? I don't know if you.
Yeah.
Okay, I can ask in Spanish because I'm from Argentina.
Okay.
No, really interesting. Yes, it was really interesting. I was thinking because of that. I'm from Argentina. If you could consider the exchange rate, but at least for us, it's really important in the decision, or not maybe not in the people that already decide to go to Uruguay, but maybe I was seeing the period, and the different years that if you have a better exchange rate, it's good for us. That does depend a lot. I saw some years that maybe could be affected this fact. And the other question, maybe if you have more recent data, if you've seen an impact of COVID restrictions, because Uruguay has a very restrictive policy due to the COVID. So, for example, we saw an increase in some destinations, that internal destination, and it was because Uruguay was closed. So maybe, I don't know, this could be interesting to make a comparison, because people is moving to the places that are open. So I don't know. Thank you. Un saludo.
Thank you, Andrea. Gracias por la pregunta. With respect to the exchange rate, I think that the phenomenon is complex, because as I said in part of my presentation, we don't know it because we don't have data, but my intuition is that most of the Argentinians are owners of second homes. So they are prisoner tourists of us, okay? I don't know the name in English, how turistas cautivos, no? So in my opinion, but this is only an opinion, Andrea, in my opinion, the exchange rate affects only a part of the tourists from Argentina, and surely is not the biggest part. Okay, this is my intuition, but I'm not sure. Okay, but you know what we can do is trying to give an interpretation each year depending on the macroeconomic situation of Argentina. But you know, Argentina every year is a chaos, so it's very difficult. Very difficult. You know, with respect to the pandemic, the phenomena was again a complex phenomena, because from on one hand we have these restrictions to enter to the country, okay, but on the other hand we have these second owners, the second home owners. And we have a lot of Argentinians asking for residence in Uruguay. We are talking about thousands of people that are going to, also friends of mine, that going to abandon the name, you know, because they are until here of the political situation of view of the politicians in Argentina. So this is very strange. So what was the situation in the pandemic? Again, this is an opinion, okay? It's not part of the scientific research, let's say. But what we have in the pandemic, without data, what can I say is that the low season in Punta del Este, the Sun and Beach destination, that the low season is winter, was the best winter in the whole history of Uruguay. Why? Because there were hundreds of families of Argentinians that moved to Uruguay during the pandemic. Okay, so most of the people that are second home owners, they decided to come to Uruguay because, as you said, the restrictions to enter in Uruguay were more restrictive than in Argentina. But the quality of life during the pandemic in Uruguay was better, because we didn't have a closed down, you know, there was just what our president called this responsible liberty. No? So you were not obligated to do a quarantine, but in Argentina the situation was very, very difficult. So I think it is a very interesting phenomena to analyze. In addition to this, Andrea, we have another research that we did during the pandemic, where we make interviews to tourists or potential tourists, people that in the past came to Uruguay from Argentina, or also domestic tourists, just to understand what was the perception, the emotions, and so on with respect to tourists in Uruguay. And the majority of the people answered that they you know, we conducted the questionnaire at the end of 2020, so December 2020, January of this year, And most of the people was desesperated to do tourism and to come to Uruguay. So probably what you can observe of this destination in Argentina that obtained a better performance because of the restriction to enter to Uruguay is only a transitory phenomenon. Okay, again, it's an opinion, but what I understand is now when they open the frontiers, you know, there are a lot of people that want to enter Uruguay, and they are asking the people to come by buquebus because by car is plenty. So the bridge are plenty of people coming wanted to come. So this is the situation. I think that the pandemic was not a shock, was a temporary shock. Okay. I think I answered everything around. Okay. Gracias, Andrea.
Gracias.
Thank you, Gabriel. I don't know if there are questions from YouTube.
No, Maria Giovanna, at the moment, no question from the YouTube channel.
Thank you, Valeria. There are other questions from PhD student.
The PhD student must make questions, no?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, you're right. We should make it compulsory.
Yes, yes. So you have to prepare a question.
So, if there are no questions, or if the students are thinking some comment, I have a curiosity, Gabriel. Do you know if in other Latin American countries there is the same survey for tourists? So in order to make the same analysis also in other Latin American countries, because I was thinking about Italy, and here we have the Bank of Italy survey on international tourism that collect data on tourist expenditure. So in Italy we can do this. But I don't know if you or your research group can do the same research on other countries, for instance, in Brazil or in Argentina or in Peru, in order to make some comparison.
Yeah. First of all, Maria Giovanna, if someone is interested in working with us, with the Italian data, for example, we are open. So we are now working with some people from Switzerland in this. But so first point, the quality of data in the Uruguayan case is very good, and this is not the case in general in the rest of Latin America, in the rest of South America, let's say, because the Mexicans, they have some interest in that. Second, you know, as it was my surprise when I was in Italy. When I was in Italy, I was surprised by discovering that the most important destination in terms of quantity of beds used in tourism, you know which is? It's not Venice, it's not Rome, it's not Firenze and so on, it's Bolzano. No? So if you ask an Italian, what is the most important tourist destination? Nobody will answer Bolzano. Think on people of the rest of the world. They don't even know what is Bolzano. No? This is in Uruguay we have a situation that is similar. Because if you compute the intensity of tourism in per capita, Uruguay is the most important destination in South America. It's not Brazil, it's not Peru, Machu Picchu, it's not Galapagos, it's not Argentina. We receive almost 1 tourist per resident. Okay, what in the case of Brazil must be something like 200 million of tourists, and they receive 500 million of tourists. Okay, so this is the problem. You know, we want to repeat the analysis to a different destination to compare the results, because we think that the situation could be different. Okay, because as you saw, Maria Giovanna, we did it within Uruguay, comparing the behavior in different destinations within Uruguay. But it could be interesting to repeat the analysis in other destinations. Is this an answer or? Okay.
Thank you. We have another question from Adriana.
Adriana
Pinate.
Hello.
From GSSI.
Hello, can
Hello.
you hear me, Professor? Yeah. Hi, Professor. Hi. I really enjoyed the presentation. I'm from Venezuela, so not so close, not so far. I was asking why. I understood that this is a survey, that is a second, you took how it is, but I was so curious, why no Paraguay? Because I understood, Paraguay have not beach, and I was thinking, I understood that this like just boundaries country, like just Brazil, Argentina. Why no considering Paraguay? Because I don't know how is the tourist situation of them. I don't know if when they want to go to the beach, I don't know if they go to Chile or they go to Brazil, maybe it's closer. I don't know. I don't know, maybe Porto Alegre, I don't know. And the other questions that the other question is about if you think that this situation of Uruguay have to be too with the robbery. Latin America is as we know, very dangerous, and perhaps the city that are more in Uruguay more visit are at the same time not only the only one maybe close to the beach, but the ones that have more amenities and at the same time are safety. Of course, Uruguay's safety compared with any other country of Latin America. But my question was those just two, if you have considered to using another like multi-level analysis and adding some community or provincial level of these outstanding variables of the same place as robbery or stuff like that. Okay, thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Your name, Pinate? No, it's not your name.
Adriana.
Adriana, gracias, Adriana. Bueno, mira.
Gracias.
Excuse me, I continue in English. Okay, Paraguay. Okay, so on one hand, I think most of the Paraguayans that go outside to do tourism come to Uruguay. But this is a small population. This is the problem. The problem is that Paraguay is a relatively poor country where the distribution of the wellness is very bad. So the Gini index of Paraguay is very bad, and that is why we receive. I can say that we receive. 1/2 of the Paraguayans that go abroad to do tourism come to Uruguay. Most of them come with cars from Paraguay. That is a long trip of 2,000 kilometers or more. They have second homes. I know a lot of Paraguayan families having a second home. But as I said, you know, most of the Paraguayans do not have money to travel, do not have money for tourism. So this is the reason why Paraguay do not enter in this aspect. Why Argentinians and Brazilians? But more or less, why Argentinians? Argentinians, as I said, is more than 50% of the tourists, international tourists in Uruguay. Why? First reason is because Punta del Este is a piece of Argentina. You know, the proprietaries of the land and the houses in Punta del Este, most of them are Argentinians. This is the first reason. And there are interesting books that I can suggest you in the where you can see why is this reason, because I can give a joke for explanation. You know, that we have the biggest estuary in the world, that is Rio de la Plata, no? Rio de la Plata is a combination of the water of two big rivers, River Uruguay and River Paraná, that when they enter in the ocean water, okay, they enter 300 kilometers from the end of the rivers to where the ocean starts. There are more than 300 kilometers of this estuary. I think the name in English is estuary, no? In Italian is estuario, no? Okay, so this is the biggest estuary in the world. And when God created this estuary, to the right side, they give all the name in English, the fango, el barro, they give all the accumulation of pieces of scat to the right side. To the left side, God puts the sand and the beach. So if you go to the Argentinian part, the coast is awful. But from the Uruguayan side, you have more than 600 kilometers of sand. So what can Argentinians do? And in particular, porteños, this from Buenos Aires, they have to come to Uruguay to go to the beach. Okay, this is a joke, but it's a joke, but it's not really a joke. So this is the explanation why not Paraguayans and why Argentinians and Brazilians. The second point is totally right what you are saying, Adriana, because I think, again, it's my opinion, but it's an intuition. Most of the tourists, particularly from South America, that come to Uruguay, they come not because they don't have beauties and fantastic destinations, but they come because it is safe. They come because you can find in Punta del Este Ferraris in the streets. You can find Porsche, you can find Lamborghinis in the street of Punta del Este. What is impossible to find in the streets of Sao Paulo, because if you go in a Ferrari in Sao Paulo, it's like having you have to have a lot of people behind you to cover your safety, no? So I think the fact that Uruguay is a quiet, let's say, quiet country, the people is not very dangerous, and we have this tradition of safety. You know, Punta del Este is an open city. One thing that the people coming from the rest of Latin America can see in Punta del Este is that the rich people are not closed behind walls. You know, they have gardens, they have parks in their houses. You remember this, no, Maria Giovanna? So
I remember very well Punta del Este, Montevideo. I remember that Surprising was a safe city with respect to other cities in Latin America.
Yeah. I think this is the point. This is one of our assets. No, it is difficult. This asset is difficult to maintain. The asset this is the asset that we have. I am sure that in Venezuela that you have places that are much better than Uruguay. I know very well Colombia, for example, and Colombia is beautiful. Have a lot of places that are more beautiful than Uruguay. You know, in Uruguay you also have a problem that is the weather. When you come to Uruguay, you don't know the weather you can find. You know, we don't have seasons as you have in Europe, no. But if you go to Venezuela or Colombia, you don't have seasons. You know when you will have rain or not. Okay.
Thank you, Professor, for the answer.
Thank you, Adriana, for the question.
So I don't know if there are other questions from the audience. I think that there are not. So any curiosity, any comment?
Oh, I have a comment on the question of Takashi.
Yeah.
It is right, Leonardo. You know, it has no sense to take the proportion of expenditure per day, because when you go to the relative expenditure, you are dividing both numerator and denominator by the same number, and so you will obtain the same. Okay, Takashi, and do you understand?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Gabriel, for this interesting talk, for the interesting methodology, because I never see the application of this methodology to tourism, as you explained during the motivation of your paper. I think we can collaborate in future, because we have a lot of data, a lot of ideas, a lot of things to develop together. And I hope we can meet in presence soon.
I hope.
And I have to thank also every participant to this webinar. And the next meeting of the GSSCI webinar series will take place next week with Lorenzo Zirulia. So we have to say goodbye to all. And
can I just remind something about that? Yeah, thank you, Maria Giovanna, and thank you, Gabriel, for this very, very interesting topic. I mean, whenever there's a combination of, say, a good and a new methodology and accurate data, it's always a pleasure to hear people like yours. As I was just, conclude by saying that actually we're going to have our next seminar on November 17th, so next Wednesday. That's going to be in presence. That's what I wanted to say. So Lorenzo will come to L'Aquila, and students that might want to have a talk with him. By chance, Lorenzo is an expert of tourism, and I don't know whether Gabriel want to participate via Zoom. We're going to have it in a blended way. So for students who are present, it's going to be in presence. But for those who can't be at the GSSI, we're going to have our standard Zoom connection. It's going to presenting a paper on booking in the rain, testing the impact of public information on prices. So an interesting topic, and I wanted just to be sure that participants and students in particular are aware of the fact that, again, it will be a seminar. Lorenzo will be in presence, and it will be possibly also available for having a talk on his research work, which is actually manifold. It also covers other topics in addition to tourism. For example, Lorenzo is a very good scholar in network analysis. He works also on innovation economics. So please be aware of that. And I just stop here, Giovanna, and I'll let you conclude. Sorry.
So thank you again, Gabriel, and goodbye.
Let me say, Maria Giovanna, only small. You know, we also have here a seminar in economics and management of tourism. So if some PhD students are working on this area and want to present some drafts or advances or want to discuss with us, we are open to receive. So our seminar is much proposed for the students, and if somebody wants to discuss further on this paper, just contact me or Maria Giovanna, and we can be in touch. Thank you very much, Sandro, Maria Giovanna.
Thank you, Gabriel.
To be with you, President.
Gabriel, I've already created the contact for you in Murcia. You have it on you have it on your email.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye. Bye.
Ciao.